Now, when we think Angela Lansbury, we think icon of stage and screen. Mrs. Potts, Beauty and the Beast. Jessica Fletcher, Murder, She Wrote. Mrs. Lovett, Sweeney Todd, and so many more. She's one of the greats of musical theatre, and yet hers is not a flashy voice. She was never a singer first, not like Alina Horn, Frank Sinatra, Rosemary Clooney. She didn't have the brute force of Ethel Merman, the jazz chops of Judy Garland, or the smooth stylings of Doris Day. So what made her so successful in musical theatre? Because isn't that all about the voice? Well, for that answer, let's follow the evolution of her singing roles. Hi, I'm Scott. You're watching Inside Musicals, the channel for all things musical theatre. Now, for copyright reasons, I can't include recordings in this video, but I will leave some links in the description. Kind of like a choose your own adventure. In spite of a promising start at MGM in 1944, with 2 Best Supporting Actress Oscar nominations from her first 3 roles, Angela Lansbury was not an overnight success. And I think this is formative to her work ethic and also her identity as an actor, and we'll uncover that as we go along. Now, we hear her singing voice for the first time in The Picture of Dorian Gray, singing Goodbye Little Yellow Bird. It's a light, reedy head voice, pleasant enough, and it works for the character because this is not a musical. It's nothing extraordinary, nothing that says, wow, this girl's a triple threat, she ought to be in musicals. The breathing's shallow, the voice is weak in the lower register. I mean, she's no threat to Catherine Grayson or Jane Powell, MGM's resident sopranos. In her next singing role, in The Harvey Girls, she plays M, the tart with a heart, a saloon singer with a much more sultry sound. Because she's dubbed by singer Virginia Reese, who also dubbed people like Marlene Dietrich and Eleanor Powell. So it's not until 1947, in the Jerome Kern biopic, Till the Clouds Roll By, that we hear her natural singing voice again, in the all-singing, all-dancing number, How'd You Like to Spoon With Me, complete with Cockney accent. Reflecting on the role, she said, I didn't have the expertise I learned later in my professional life to really sell the song. I was too demure. And while it's true this is still a timid head voice, it's more playful here. And in the context of recreating English music hall, it works. Now, inevitably, the MGM publicity machine gives her the glamour makeover. But she's never promoted as one of the great beauties like Elizabeth Taylor, Lana Turner. She's not an exotic novelty like Carmen Miranda. She's not the all-American girl next door like June Allison or Judy Garland. And she's not getting the serious dramatic roles like Bette Davis. Instead, she's consigned to playing second fiddle as middle-aged women when she's still only in her 20s. So in 1952, she doesn't renew a contract with MGM, which is a big deal at the time. The studios are still the power brokers. As a contract player, you're paid every week and kept busy. As a freelancer, there's no guarantee of work when the studio prioritises their own stars. So the choice to leave says something about her priorities, that perhaps she was more interested in the material or being an actress than in being a star. And while she's not an unknown, she's not bankable, she's a B actress. So the following decade is probably the lowest point of her career. In her words, at times she was desperate, taking whatever role she could get in theatre or film, ranging from what she described as the worst movie she ever made, to some critical successes, including The Manchurian Candidate, which is still considered one of her finest screen achievements and earned her a 3rd Best Supporting Actress Oscar nomination. But it's not until 1964, aged 39, 12 years since leaving MGM, she makes her Broadway musical theatre debut in the ill-fated Stephen Sondheim musical Anyone Can Whistle. 12 previews, 9 performances, closed. Now, ironically, Stephen Sondheim performed 33 backers auditions to raise money for the show. So technically, he played to more audiences than the cast. Describing herself as a quiet person who likes to get on with her work, this project was far from ideal for Angela Lansbury. I feel weird calling her just Angela, Angie, Bridget, as her friends and family knew her. I only ever met her once, it feels too familiar, so Angela Lansbury it is. But this show was fraught with tension and difficulty, not least because the musical director would grab her by the throat and squeeze to get a sound out. Nevertheless, it's a turning point for her vocally. This is a voice we'd never heard before. It's pure chest voice and she's belting at the top of her range. In an interview she said, I gasped with worry and concern with how I was singing in those days because I was using a voice that was not trained to do what it was asked to do. I was singing out of my range and it sounded thin, tinny at times. An embarrassment in some respects, but I think the drama of the songs came through because if I couldn't sing it, I was going to act it. I saw this as an acting exercise. I was an actor who sang. I want to know who I am when I sing. And I think this is an insight into her priorities. She adored Sondheim's work, and while I don't think the soundtrack is nearly as embarrassing as she makes out, and it probably doesn't help that it was recorded the day after the show closed with emotions running high, but this is perhaps the least convincing vocal performance of her career. And not because it's bad, but that strident edge of the voice is at odds with the style that Sondheim was writing. He modelled the sound of this character on singer Kay Thompson, who had a nightclub act at the time, a sophisticated act, backed by the Williams brothers' tight vocal harmonies. Kay had a powerful voice, but it was full and smooth throughout the range, not like the edgy sound we get on this recording. Mind you, I'd probably sound edgy if a musical director was grasping me by the throat while I was singing. Incidentally, Angela Lansbury would have worked with Kay Thompson at MGM. Kay was one of the great vocal arrangers who worked at a number of studios and also was vocal coach to many of their stars. You can hear her influence in Judy Garland. In fact, they were such good friends, Kay Thompson is Liza Minnelli's godmother. There's one for the trivia buffs. And I'll leave a couple of links to Kay in the description because she's quite unlike anyone else. She's physical and musical and exacting and a force of nature. She makes a rare film appearance opposite Fred Astaire in Funny Face, and she practically performs him off the screen. Not an easy thing to do. For more Kay Thompson, Angela Lansbury connections, keep watching to the end because I have a few more. But if Anyone Can Whistle was no happy experience for Angela Lansbury, 1966 is perhaps her Broadway coming of age in the Jerry Herman musical Mame. The success of the show and a Tony Award for her performance elevates her from B-actress to star. And in Mame, we hear a mature, confident, open-throated chest voice. But instead of belting all the top notes, now she can ease into head voice where she needs to, just to lighten the sound. But there's something else worth saying. She has a much brighter, higher set voice than co-star Bea Arthur, and she could easily have outsung her. But she doesn't. And there's a beautiful clip of the two of them reuniting to sing Bosom Buddies at the 1987 Tony Awards. And it's just two friends having a ball. There's no competition here. Not like Mariah and Whitney at the 99 Oscars. I mean, talk about a diva off. There's only a generosity of spirit, and it shows her as a real class act. So even though her next Jerry Herman musical, Dear World, was not nearly as successful as Mame, the soundtrack has its moments. The richness and ease of her voice tells me this is someone who's hit her stride and she's mastered her technique. And this is perhaps the warmest, most open sound we ever hear from Angela Lansbury. Because while her next commercial success, Bedknobs and Broomsticks, introduced her to a wider commercial audience, it's not one of the Sherman Brothers' greatest scores compared to Jungle Book, Mary Poppins, or my personal favourite, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which just bristles with invention and wit and pathos. This is a pretty stodgy affair. It's not so much that it's a backward step vocally as it just doesn't give her much to do. But the kookiness of her character foreshadows characters to come. But first, there's a West End revival of Gypsy, another Stephen Sondheim classic. She was worried about comparisons with Ethel Merman, who originated the role. Whereas Merman is a sledgehammer, Lansbury's Mama Rose is more nuanced, with much more warmth, and we can understand how the character charms herself into opportunities for both her and her daughters. Vocally, Lansbury's on top of the material. She's built on the foundations of Mame, but now there's more attack and bite. This is the version of Gypsy I grew up listening to, and along with the Bette Midler version, which I think captures the brashness of Merman and some of the humanity of Lansbury, are probably my two favourite recordings of this show. Yes, more than Patti LuPone. Yes, more than Tyne Daly, more than Imelda Staunton. Do you have a favourite? And then everything changes. 1979 reunited her with Stephen Sondheim in Sweeney Todd, her meatiest role yet. Oh, come on, that's funny. That's funny. Isn't it? A quick sidebar for Stephen Sondheim and Angela Lansbury fans. If you haven't seen Knives Out, Glass Onion, they both have a cameo. Short, but it's sweet in what would ultimately be a final screen appearance for both of them. Now, Sondheim maintains that Sweeney Todd was easy to write once it was cast because he wasn't writing for Angela Lansbury, he was writing for Angela Lansbury as Mrs. Lovett, in the same way that she's now singing as Mrs. Lovett. And in her performance, we hear crassness, comedy, humanity, generosity of spirit, to bring warmth to a character who's ultimately the villain of the piece. But she's so confident in her vocal technique here, she doesn't have to impress by being beautiful. So she leans into the grotesque, Cockney accent, tightness in the back of the larynx. Not because she doesn't know any better, but it's right for the character. We hear this again in the 1983 film Pirates of Penzance, where she plays middle-aged Ruth for broad comedy. As she declared, she's an actress who sings. She's taking liberty with the vocal, but it's grounded in technique and not limited by shortcomings. So there's an ease to it, and it never sounds like hard work. Pierce Brosnan, Mamma Mia. Okay, never mention it again. I'll probably mention it again. Now, I bet you didn't think I was going to mention Murder, She Wrote, because it's not a musical. But in the 1985 episode Sing a Song of Murder, Angela Lansbury plays Jessica Fletcher's cousin Emma, who sings Goodbye Little Yellow Bird, the song that Angela Lansbury sung 40 years earlier in The Picture of Dorian Gray. Same key, prominently head voice, which is no longer a register we really associate with her, but it's fascinating to hear how the voice has matured, consolidated. There's no timidity here. It's stronger without feeling forced. And there's a joyful knowingness to it. She's really having a wink with the audience. If you find this stuff interesting, but you're not someone who comments, maybe like or subscribe. Just tells me I'm on the right track. By now, Angela Lansbury's passed into pop culture and there's a genuine public affection for her. In fact, I remember many years ago, drag queens lip-syncing to sections of Murder, She Wrote in their act. In fact, there was an Asian drag queen called Jessica Fletcher, probably all colours of wrong these days, but apparently Angela Lansbury was thrilled to have a gay following, to be a gay icon, so I'm sure it was okay. So when she plays the kindly Mrs. Potts in Beauty and the Beast, there's something authentic about it, like she's mother to the world. And so when she sings a song, Beauty and the Beast, it sounds as natural and easy as talking, because she's blending singing and speech. And it's a choice. Celine Dion's version is much more flashy, but they have different reason for being. And when I heard someone unfairly comparing the two, saying, Angela Lansbury can't really sing, can she? I thought, well, that's really missing the point. What I hear in Mrs. Potts, apart from nostalgia, is the sound of experience, confidence, craft, curiosity, character, warmth, a willingness to communicate. So for a self-described quiet person who didn't know how to sell a song in Till the Clouds Roll By, I hear someone selling a song without being the loudest voice in the room. And the truth is, an audience tires of loud. What they never tire of is a good story, well told. And Angela Lansbury tells a good story. So where do you draw the line between character and vocal perfection? Are you even aware of it? Leave me a comment. As always, thank you so much for watching. I love you. Still watching? Okay, here's some more of those Angela Lansbury-Kay Thompson connections. While Kay Thompson was recording Angela's vocal for the Harvey Girls with Virginia Reese, she had Virginia Reese record another vocal for Angela's next film, Easy to Wed. When Angela was replaced by Lucille Ball in the role, Lucy ultimately had to lip-sync to the vocal intended for Angela Lansbury. Years later, when Lucille Ball was cast as Mame in the film version of the musical that Lansbury had created on stage, Kay Thompson was originally cast opposite her as Vera Charles, until negotiations broke down and then Bea Arthur, Lansbury's original co-star, stepped into the role. When Kay Thompson's marriage broke down, who did her husband start dating? Angela Lansbury, until he moved on to June Harrick. But now we're getting into gossip, so get out there and be brilliant.